The polished steel staircase of Damian Kage's headquarters gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights as Anya Volkov's heels, one broken, one missing, clattered against each step. The expensive burgundy silk of her wedding gown, now torn and stained with spilled ink from her frantic escape, dragged behind her like a wounded flag of surrender. Security guards materialized at every landing, weapons drawn, their laser sights painting red dots across her chest. But the only sound louder than her ragged breathing was the memory of Max Thorne's final keystroke, the activation code that would detonate the financial collapse of two empires in 72 hours. The encrypted hard drive burned against her palm like evidence of damnation. At the top of the stairs stood Damian Kage himself, perfectly composed in his tailored suit, surrounded by the cold glass and steel of his penthouse office. His expression was carved from marble, calculating, controlled, lethal. The CEO who had never lost a deal. The rival her father had spent 20 years trying to destroy. Anya's voice cut through the silence like a blade through silk. Max Thorne has engineered the financial annihilation of both our empires, and I have the proof on this drive. Before we dive into story, if you're ready to witness Anya transform from trapped daughter to financial mastermind, subscribe now, because this story is about to get deadly. Damian Kage didn't move. He simply observed her, the wild-eyed bride clutching a hard drive like a lifeline, wedding gown shredded, mascara streaked down her cheeks, with the same clinical detachment he'd used to assess a quarterly earnings report. "Lower your weapons," he said finally, his voice carrying the quiet authority of a man who'd never needed to raise it. The red dots vanished from Anya's chest. She swayed on her feet, adrenaline beginning to drain from her system, but her grip on the drive never loosened. "You're Viktor Maroni's daughter." It wasn't a question. Damian stepped closer, hands in his pockets, studying her with those cold gray eyes that had intimidated shareholders and senators alike. "The one he keeps hidden." "The accountant." "Forensic financial analyst," Anya corrected automatically, then cursed herself. She was negotiating for her life, not her LinkedIn profile. A ghost of something, amusement perhaps, flickered across Damian's face. "And yet you ran to me. Not to your father. Not to the authorities." He tilted his head. "Why?" "Because my father would never believe me." The words came out harsh, brittle. Viktor Maroni doesn't see financial schemes. He sees insults and opportunities for violence. If I told him Max was planning a corporate fraud of this magnitude, he'd think it was a fabrication, your fabrication, designed to sabotage the alliance. She met his gaze directly. "He'd lock me in a room until after the wedding and call it protection." Damian was silent for a long moment, weighing her words against what he knew of Viktor Maroni's brutally simple worldview. "Show me the drive." "Not until we have terms." His eyebrow arched. "You're in no position to negotiate." "Neither are you." Anya straightened despite her exhaustion, channeling every ounce of the cold logic that had gotten her through a decade of hiding her brilliance. "In 72 hours, Max activates the collapse. Your corporate empire implodes. My father's legitimate businesses evaporate. And Max walks away with control of the entire territory's financial infrastructure, both legal and illegal." She held up the drive. "This contains the shell company network, the insider trading schedules, the routing codes. Everything you need to stop him. But I need something first." "Your life wasn't enough?" "My mother. My sister Livia. Full protection, new identities if necessary, relocated to a secure property under your direct control." Her voice didn't waver. "Non-negotiable." Damian studied her for another excruciating moment. Then he turned to one of his men. "Marcus. Arrange a secure apartment in the Riverside complex. 2 bedrooms, 24-hour detail." He looked back at Anya. "Your mother and sister will be retrieved within the hour. They'll be told you're safe and that cooperation is in everyone's best interest." Relief nearly buckled her knees, but she forced herself to remain standing. "And me. You." Damian stepped closer, invading her space with the calculated precision of a predator. You're going to decrypt that drive. You're going to walk me through every transaction, every shell company, every compromised asset. You're going to prove that Viktor Maroni's brilliant daughter is worth more than the political alliance she was sold for. His eyes gleamed with something dangerous. You're a liability and a genius, Miss Volkov. Welcome to your new cage. He extended his hand. Anya looked at it, at the choice between certain death with Max and uncertain servitude with Damian, and placed the encrypted drive in his palm. The decryption key is a 16-digit algorithm based on Fibonacci sequences, she said quietly. I'll need a secure terminal and 12 hours. You have 6. Damian turned toward the glass doors leading deeper into his headquarters. And Miss Volkov? Don't make me regret this, Mercy. As his security team escorted her through the polished corridors, Anya caught her reflection in the glass, a ghost bride walking voluntarily into captivity. But this time, she'd negotiated the terms. The secure office was a vault within a vault, reinforced walls, no windows, 3 separate biometric locks on a door that could withstand a military-grade breach. The terminal before Anya hummed with quiet power, its triple encrypted connection isolated from every external network. Damian had provided everything she'd requested: forensic accounting software, access to international banking databases, and a cup of black coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. She hadn't noticed. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, lines of code and financial data cascading down the screen in a waterfall of numbers that would have been incomprehensible to anyone else. To Anya, they told a story, a meticulously constructed narrative of systematic betrayal. He used a modified Betrayal method, she said without looking up. Damian had been standing behind her for the past 20 minutes, silent as a shadow, watching her work. 15th-century double-entry bookkeeping, the foundation of modern accounting. Most people think it's obsolete. But it's not. It's a decoy. Anya pulled up a parallel screen, her eyes scanning transaction logs with practiced efficiency. Max layered the Betrayal structure over a contemporary shell company network. Anyone attempting to decrypt this would waste days unraveling the historical method, thinking they'd found the fraud. She highlighted a series of seemingly random transfers. But the real scheme is hidden in the metadata: timestamp manipulations, microsecond discrepancies in transaction records that create ghost accounts. Damian leaned closer, his focus sharpening. Ghost accounts that don't show up in standard audits. Exactly. Anya's voice carried a bitter edge. Max spent 2 years building this infrastructure. He recruited insiders, established shell corporations in 12 different jurisdictions, and created a cascade algorithm designed to trigger simultaneous short positions across both your portfolio and my father's legitimate holdings. She pulled up a projection model, and the screen filled with red. 72 hours from now, this activates. Market confidence collapses. Stock prices plummet. And Max's network swoops in to acquire everything at pennies on the dollar. The projection was devastating in its elegance. A perfect financial execution. How much? Damian's voice was quiet, controlled, but Anya heard the steel underneath. Conservative estimate? 8 billion in combined losses. Your corporate holdings lose 60% of their value. My father's businesses go bankrupt, and he faces federal investigation for market manipulation. Charges Max has already ceded through compromised regulatory contacts. She met his eyes in the reflection of the screen. Max doesn't just want money. He wants the entire territory's infrastructure. Legal and illegal. Damian was silent for a long moment, processing. Then, you decrypted this in 4 hours. I gave you 6. I know Max's patterns. I've been auditing my father's books since I was 16. Anya's jaw tightened. I knew something was wrong 6 months ago. Transaction irregularities, timing gaps. But Viktor wouldn't listen to his daughter's paranoia. So I started my own investigation. And found the evidence on your wedding day. Found the activation protocol on my wedding day, she corrected. Max was sloppy. Overconfident. He kept the master file on his personal laptop in the Groom'S suite, protected by what he thought was unbreakable encryption. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. It took me 11 minutes to crack it. Damian studied her, really studied her, as if seeing past the ruined wedding dress and exhausted desperation to the razor-sharp mind underneath. Viktor Maroni is a fool. Viktor Maroni sees his daughters as bargaining chips, not assets. Then he's about to learn an expensive lesson. Damian straightened, decision crystallizing in his expression. You're not a witness anymore, Miss Volkov. You're my financial architect. And we're going to dismantle Max Thorne's empire piece by piece. Anya turned in her chair, meeting his gaze directly. Where do we start? With the mole. Damian's smile was cold and predatory. Because Max didn't build this alone. Someone inside my organization gave him access. And you're going to find out who. Anya had been staring at the transaction logs for 3 hours, her eyes burning from the screen's glare, when she saw it. A single transfer that made her spine go rigid. There. She highlighted the entry, her voice cutting through the silence of the secure office. Transaction dated 14 months ago. $2 million routed from one of your subsidiary accounts to a shell company called Cerberus Holdings. Damian moved to stand behind her chair. Cerberus isn't flagged in our quarterly audits. Because it shouldn't exist. Anya pulled up the corporate registry, her fingers dancing across the keyboard. Cerberus Holdings was incorporated in the Cayman Islands using a standard formation service. Completely legal, completely anonymous. On paper, it's a legitimate investment vehicle for high-net-worth clients. She zoomed in on the ownership structure. But look at the transaction pattern. The screen filled with a spiderweb of transfers. Small amounts, seemingly random, flowing in and out of Cerberus at irregular intervals. To anyone conducting a surface-level audit, it would look like normal investment activity. These transactions don't follow logical corporate structure, Anya continued, her analytical mind dissecting the pattern. There's no profit motive, no strategic acquisition, no clear business purpose. The amounts are too small to matter individually but too consistent to be coincidental. She isolated a series of transfers. Every single one corresponds to a date when Max accessed sensitive information about your portfolio. Acquisition targets, merger negotiations, vulnerability assessments. Damian's expression darkened. Someone's feeding him intelligence. Not just feeding. Facilitating. Anya cross-referenced the Cerberus transactions against Damian's internal communications logs, a database she'd been granted access to an hour ago. Cerberus received wire transfers within 48 hours of every major strategic decision you made in the last year. Someone with high-level access is monitoring your moves in real time and passing them directly to Max's network. Can you trace the authorization? Anya pulled up the internal approval chain, her heart rate accelerating as the data loaded. All transfers over 1 million require dual executive authorization. This one was approved by. She stopped, the name on the screen sending ice through her veins. Silas Vance. The silence that followed was absolute. Silas Vance. Damian's chief financial officer. 20 years with the organization. The man who'd restructured Damian's entire corporate portfolio, who'd negotiated deals worth billions, who sat in on every strategic planning session and had unrestricted access to every sensitive file in the company. You're certain? Damian's voice was dangerously quiet. I'm certain he authorized the transfer. Whether he knew what it was for, Anya pulled up Vance's personal financial records, files that even she was surprised she had access to. Damian's network was more invasive than she'd imagined. He knew. The screen showed a parallel account in Vance's name, hidden under his wife's maiden name, receiving monthly deposits from a subsidiary of Cerberus Holdings. Small amounts, 50,000 here, $80,000 there, carefully structured to avoid triggering automatic compliance reviews. He's been on Max's payroll for at least 18 months, Anya said, her voice hollow. Every strategy session, every vulnerability you discussed, every move you planned. Max knew about it before you executed. Vance gave him complete operational visibility. Damian's jaw tightened. The only visible sign of the fury Anya knew was building beneath his controlled exterior. How deep does this go? Anya traced the Cerberus network further, following digital breadcrumbs through shell companies and offshore accounts. Vance isn't the only one. There are 3 other companies in the network. Hydra Capital, Styx Investments, Tartarus Fund. Greek underworld mythology, all connected. She pulled up another screen. But Cerberus is the hub. Every piece of intelligence flows through Vance before reaching Max. Then Vance is the key. Damian straightened, his decision already made. We don't just need to stop the financial collapse. We need to feed Max false information, make him think his plan is succeeding while we dismantle it from within. You want to turn Vance into a weapon. I want to turn your discovery into a weapon. Damian's eyes met hers, and for the first time, Anya saw something beyond cold calculation, a glimmer of genuine respect. You found in 3 hours what my entire security team missed for 18 months. Max thought he was using Vance to destroy me. Instead, Vance just became his greatest vulnerability. Anya leaned back in her chair, exhaustion warring with the electric thrill of intellectual victory. What do you need me to do? Keep digging. Find every connection, every compromised asset, every piece of Max's network. Damian moved toward the door, then paused. And Miss Volkov? You just proved you're worth far more than whatever your father was paid for you. As the door sealed behind him, Anya turned back to her screens. The wedding dress she still wore a ghost of the life she'd fled. She'd found the mole. Now she needed to expose the entire conspiracy before Max's timer ran out. Anya had changed out of the wedding dress hours ago. Someone from Damian's staff had provided dark slacks and a fitted blouse that felt almost like armor compared to the silk prison she'd worn. But she barely noticed. Her attention was riveted to the pattern emerging across her screens. A pattern so elegant in its brutality that she almost admired it. Almost. He's going to short the stock. She didn't look up as Damian entered the secure office, a fresh pot of coffee in hand, a gesture that surprised her. CEOs didn't typically serve their analysts. Max's entire strategy hinges on a coordinated short position that triggers panic selling. Damian set the coffee beside her, studying the data visualization she'd built. Explain. My father's system operates on reputation and fear. Crude, but effective. Max understands that. Anya pulled up a timeline, her fingers moving with practiced precision. But your empire is different. It's built on investor confidence, stock valuations, credit ratings. Max can't just kill you and take over. He needs to destroy your financial credibility first. She highlighted a series of transactions buried deep in the Cerberus network. 3 days ago, Max established massive short positions against Kage Industries, your flagship publicly traded company. He's betting the stock will collapse, and when it does, he'll profit billions while simultaneously destroying your access to capital markets. Kageteca's fundamentals are solid. A short attack won't work without a catalyst. He has a catalyst. Anya's voice went cold. Orlando Rossi. The name hung in the air like a blade. Orlando Rossi, the influential board member whose investment firm controlled 17% of Kageteca's institutional holdings. A man whose reputation for conservative, stable investments made him the market's bellwether for corporate health. If Rossi dumps his position, the market panics, Damian said quietly. And Max has leverage on him. Anya pulled up a separate file, this one considerably harder to obtain. Personal financial records she'd accessed through her father's network, using credentials she'd memorized years ago. Rossi's sister Valentina, runs a boutique investment fund in Milan. Small operation, exclusive clientele, impeccable reputation. She zoomed in on a series of transactions. Except 6 months ago, Valentina made a catastrophic investment in a derivative scheme that's about to implode. She's facing bankruptcy and regulatory investigation. Damian leaned closer, his interest sharpening. And Max knows. Max orchestrated it. Anya's jaw tightened as the pieces fell into place. Look at the counterparty on Valentina's derivative contracts. A fund called Lethe Capital. Another shell company in Max's network. He baited her into the investment, then engineered its collapse. Now he has leverage. Orlando dumps his Kage position, or Valentina faces financial and legal ruin. When does the derivative contract expire? 48 hours. Anya met his eyes. The same moment Max's cascade algorithm activates. Orlando dumps his shares, Kage stock plummets, the short position pays out, and market confidence in your entire corporate structure evaporates. Your credit lines freeze, your acquisitions stall, and Max walks in to purchase your assets at liquidation prices. The elegance of it was undeniable. Max had turned a personal tragedy into a financial weapon, using Valentina Rossi as collateral damage to destroy Damian's empire. Can we counter it? Damian's voice carried no panic, only cold calculation. We can preempt it. Anya pulled up a new screen, this one showing a complex financial structure she'd been designing for the past hour. If we know Orlando's being coerced, we approach him first. We offer to absorb Valentina's losses through a private restructuring, one that saves her reputation and her fund. In exchange, Orlando maintains his position and issues a public statement of confidence in Kage. That still leaves Max with his short position, which becomes worthless when the stock doesn't collapse. Anya's smile was sharp. Better yet, we leak selective information through Silas Vance. False data suggesting Kage is about to announce a major acquisition. The stock rises instead of falling, and Max's short position bankrupts him. Damian was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he placed both hands on the desk, leaning in until his face was level with hers. You're not just an analyst, Miss Volkov. You're a financial architect. And you just designed the weapon that's going to destroy Max Thorne. Then we need to move now. Anya stood, adrenaline replacing exhaustion. Orlando needs to be contacted before Max applies more pressure. We have 2 days to save Valentina and secure his position. We also need to build the counter dossier. Damian straightened, already moving into command mode. Everything you found, Cerberus, Vance, the Rossi leverage, the cascade algorithm. We document it all, create an irrefutable case. For my father. For your father. Damian's eyes held hers. Because you're going to be the one who presents it to him. The weight of that settled over Anya like a mantle. She would have to face Viktor Maroni, armed with nothing but data and logic, and convince a man who valued violence over spreadsheets that his world was about to end. Then let's forge the weapon, she said quietly. And pray it's sharp enough to cut through his pride. Anya was reviewing the final pages of the counter dossier when Damian burst into the secure office, his controlled composure fractured by something she'd never seen in him before. Urgency. We're out of time. He crossed to her terminal in 3 strides. Max just accelerated the timeline. The cascade activates in 48 hours, not 72. The coffee cup slipped from Anya's hand, shattering against the floor. That's impossible. The algorithm was scheduled for. He moved it up. Damian pulled up a message on his phone, showing her an encrypted communication his intelligence team had intercepted. Orlando Rossi received a final ultimatum 1 hour ago. Dump his Kage position by market open Wednesday, or Valentina's derivative losses get leaked to Italian regulators along with fabricated evidence of fraud. Anya's mind raced, recalculating every timeline, every contingency. Wednesday morning is 36 hours from now. If Orlando dumps before we can reach him, the market crashes, Max's short position pays out, and both our empires collapse before we can mount a defense. Damian's jaw tightened. We can't wait to build the perfect case. We move now. We haven't secured Orlando yet. We haven't neutralized Vance. The dossier isn't. The dossier is enough. Damian's voice cut through her rising panic. You've documented everything. The shell companies, the insider network, the Rossi leverage, the cascade algorithm. You have forensic proof of systematic fraud spanning 18 months. He placed both hands on her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. But none of it matters unless Viktor Maroni acts. The weight of that statement crushed down on Anya. Her father. The man who'd dismissed her intelligence her entire life, who'd sold her like a corporate asset to cement a political alliance, who would view this entire situation as a rival's manipulation rather than his daughter's salvation. He won't believe me. Her voice came out hollow. Viktor doesn't trust spreadsheets. He trusts blood and violence. If I walk into his office with financial analysis, he'll think you coached me, that this is your play to sabotage the Leon alliance. Then you make him understand that ignoring you will cost him everything. Damian's grip tightened, anchoring her. You're not presenting speculation, Anya. You're presenting irrefutable evidence. Every transaction traced, every shell company exposed, every piece of the conspiracy documented with forensic precision. You show him that Max Thorne isn't planning a simple betrayal. He's engineering Viktor's complete financial annihilation. And if he still doesn't listen? Then you tell him that in 48 hours, the federal government will have this exact same dossier. Damian's smile was cold. Because Max's scheme doesn't just destroy us. It constitutes securities fraud, market manipulation, and money laundering on a federal scale. When the SEC investigates the collapse, they'll trace it straight back to Viktor's legitimate businesses. Max is framing your father for crimes that will put him in prison for the rest of his life. Anya's breath caught. She'd been so focused on the financial mechanics that she hadn't considered the legal implications. Max wasn't just stealing Viktor's empire. He was engineering his complete destruction, leaving him penniless and imprisoned while Max walked away clean. Viktor would rather die than go to prison, she whispered. Then give him the weapon to fight back. Damian released her shoulders, stepping back. You present the evidence. You force him to see that acting on your intelligence is his only path to survival. You make him choose between his pride and his legacy. When? Tomorrow morning. Before the markets open. Before Orlando makes his move. Damian pulled out his phone, already coordinating. I'll arrange a meeting at neutral territory, the Sentinel Hotel, executive boardroom. Private, secure, no weapons. Viktor will agree because he'll want to see what his daughter has to say about running to his rival on her wedding day. The cynicism in that statement should have hurt. Instead, it clarified everything. This was never going to be a tearful reconciliation. This was a negotiation between a father who'd never valued her mind and a daughter who'd finally weaponized it. I'll need 6 hours to finalize the presentation, Anya said, her voice steadying. Visual data, timeline reconstruction, legal exposure analysis. If I'm going to convince Viktor Maroni that his world is ending, I need to show him exactly how Max built the guillotine. You'll have your 6 hours. Damian moved toward the door, then paused. Anya. She looked up. I've watched you dismantle a conspiracy that my entire security apparatus missed. You've exposed a mole who operated under my nose for 18 months. You've anticipated moves from a man who spent 2 years planning the perfect crime. His expression softened almost imperceptibly. Your father is a fool for not seeing your brilliance. But I do. And when you walk into that boardroom tomorrow, you won't be Viktor Maroni's disposable daughter. You'll be the analyst who saved 2 empires. He left before she could respond, the door sealing with a soft hiss. Anya turned back to her screens, pulled up a blank presentation template, and began to build the case that would either save her family or condemn them all. 48 hours until the collapse. 6 hours until she faced her father. The weapon was forged. Now she just had to find the courage to wield it. The car was moving through the pre-dawn darkness, city lights blurring past the bulletproof windows, when Anya's laptop chimed with an alert that made her blood freeze. Stop the car. Her voice was sharp enough to cut through Damian's phone conversation with his security chief. The driver glanced at Damian, who nodded. The vehicle pulled smoothly to the curb, engine idling. What is it? Damian leaned over to see her screen, his tone shifting instantly from casual authority to combat readiness. Asset liquidation. Happening right now. Anya's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up real-time market data. Someone's dumping small positions across multiple accounts. Tech stocks, commodities futures, real estate holdings. Individual transactions are tiny, 15 to 30,000 each, but they're happening simultaneously across what looks like, she counted rapidly, 17 different satellite accounts. Which accounts? That's the problem. They're not flagged in your primary portfolio. She cross-referenced the account numbers against Damian's master database, her analytical mind racing. These are legacy holdings, acquisitions from smaller companies you absorbed years ago. The kind of minor assets that don't show up in quarterly reviews because individually they're insignificant. Damian's expression darkened. But collectively? Collectively, someone just liquidated $4 million in assets in under 3 minutes. Anya pulled up a network visualization, watching the pattern emerge. And look at the timing. Each dump is separated by exactly 47 seconds. That's not panic selling. That's automated. Programmed. Max is testing our response time. No. He's testing something else. Anya zoomed in on the transaction pattern, her heart hammering. These aren't valuable assets. They're tripwires. He's dumping them to see where our security protocols activate, which accounts trigger automatic monitoring, where the gaps are in our surveillance network. The implications crystallized with terrifying clarity. Max wasn't launching his main attack. He was probing their defenses, identifying vulnerabilities in real time so he could route his cascade algorithm through the weakest points when the real assault began. He's mapping our firewall, Anya said, her voice tight. Every response we make to these dumps gives him information about our security architecture. If we freeze the accounts, he knows we're monitoring them. If we don't, he knows their blind spots. So we're damned either way. Not if we're smarter. Anya pulled up Damian's complete portfolio architecture, the sprawling network of companies and holdings that comprised his empire. These satellite accounts all route through a central clearinghouse, Meridian Capital Trust. It's a legacy institution, small operation, handles the administrative back-end for your minor acquisitions. She highlighted a critical junction point. But Meridian also processes transactions for one of your major holdings, the Harbor Point Development Project. $3 billion in real estate assets, leveraged to your primary credit lines. Damian's eyes narrowed. If Max compromises Meridian, he gets access to Harbor Point's transaction infrastructure. And if he can manipulate those records, he can make it look like Harbor Point is insolvent, which triggers margin calls on your credit lines, which starts the cascade before Orlando even dumps his Cogatech position. Anya's mind was already calculating countermoves. This isn't a test. This is the opening move. Max is going for Harbor Point right now. How long do we have? Anya checked the transaction timestamps, tracking the progression. The satellite dump started 11 minutes ago. If Max follows the pattern, he'll hit Meridian's core systems in, she calculated rapidly, 8 to 12 minutes. Maybe less. Damian was already on his phone. Marcus, Redirect the full cybersecurity team to Meridian Capital Trust. I want every firewall reinforced, every access point locked down, and every transaction frozen pending manual review. He paused, listening. I don't care if it causes operational delays. Do it now. He disconnected and looked at Anya. What else? We need to physically secure Meridian's servers. If Max has someone inside, another mole like Vance, they could bypass digital security and access the system directly. She pulled up the company's location. Meridian's offices are 12 blocks from here. Small building, minimal security. If Max has people on the ground. He does. Damian was already redirecting the driver. Change of plans. Meridian Capital Trust. Fastest route. And call ahead. I want armed security at that building in 5 minutes. The car surged forward, weaving through early morning traffic with controlled aggression. Anya watched her screen as Damian's security protocols activated across Meridian's network. Firewalls slamming into place, access points locking down, transactions freezing mid-execution. The satellite account dumps had stopped, the probing attack halted by their preemptive defense. But the damage assessment was already running. 2 accounts had been compromised before the lockdown, their credentials captured, their access routes mapped. He got in, Anya said quietly. Not deep enough to cause catastrophic damage, but enough to confirm Harbor Point is vulnerable. Then we move the meeting up. Damian's voice was granite. Max knows we're on to him. The 48-hour timeline just became 24. You present to your father this morning, before Max adjusts his strategy. Anya closed her laptop, the weight of the impending confrontation settling over her like a physical force. The weapon was forged. The threat was confirmed. And now she had to walk into a room with Viktor Maroni and convince him that his daughter's spreadsheets were more valuable than his son-in-law's promises. The car raced toward Meridian as dawn broke over the city, casting long shadows across a financial empire teetering on the edge of collapse. The Sentinel Hotel's executive boardroom was deliberately neutral. Glass walls overlooking the city, polished mahogany table, no allegiances, no history. Viktor Maroni sat at the head of the table like a king in exile, flanked by 2 of his lieutenants, his expression carved from stone. He looked older than Anya remembered, the lines around his eyes deeper, but his gaze still carried the same dismissive contempt it always had when he looked at his daughters. Anya walked in alone. Damian had offered to accompany her, but this confrontation needed to be hers. She carried only her laptop and the encrypted drive, evidence and logic, the only weapons she'd ever been allowed to master. Anya! Viktor's voice was rough, heavy with barely contained fury. You run from your wedding to my enemy's bed, and now you summon me like I'm some subordinate? I summoned you because in 18 hours, Maximilian Thorne is going to destroy everything you've built. She set the laptop on the table, opened it, and connected to the boardroom's display screen. And I'm the only person who can stop it. Viktor's lieutenant, Gregor, a man who'd terrified Anya as a child, half rose from his chair. You don't speak to your father. Sit down. Anya's voice cracked like a whip, surprising even herself. You can beat me later if you want, Gregor. But right now, you're going to shut up and listen, because I'm about to save Viktor Maroni from federal prison. The room went deadly silent. Viktor's eyes narrowed, but he raised a hand, stopping Gregor. You have 5 minutes. I'll need 3. Anya pulled up the first slide, the network visualization of Max's shell company infrastructure. 18 months ago, Max Thorne began constructing a financial weapon designed to simultaneously destroy Damian Kage's corporate empire and implicate you in securities fraud, market manipulation, and money laundering. He recruited a mole inside Kage's organization, established shell companies in 12 jurisdictions, and built a cascade algorithm that will trigger coordinated short positions across multiple markets. Fairy tales. Viktor's voice dripped with scorn. Kage fed you these lies to sabotage the Leon alliance. Then explained Cerberus Holdings. Anya pulled up the shell company's transaction records. Incorporated in the Cayman Islands 14 months ago. Received $2 million from Damian's accounts. Authorized by a mole named Silas Vance. Used to funnel intelligence to Max about Kage's vulnerabilities. She zoomed in on specific transactions. But look at the parallel transfers. Every time Cerberus received intelligence money, a sister company called Hydra Capital received funds from accounts linked to your legitimate businesses. Viktor's expression didn't change, but his lieutenant leaned forward, suddenly interested. Max isn't just attacking Kage. He's framing you. Anya advanced to the next slide, showing the intricate money trail. These are transactions from your import-export companies, the legitimate businesses you use to wash revenue. Max has been systematically routing money through your accounts, using them as pass-throughs for his shell company network. When the SEC investigates the market crash, and they will investigate, the forensic trail leads directly to your businesses. You become the architect of the fraud. Impossible. Those accounts are secure. They were secure until Max gave him your access credentials. Anya pulled up the evidence she dreaded showing. Who do you think provided Max with your banking passwords, your subsidiary account numbers, your corporate structure? Who had unrestricted access to your financial systems and every reason to want you gone? She displayed a photograph, Viktor with his most trusted financial advisor, Roberto Costa, the man who'd managed the Maroni family's money for 15 years. Roberto has been on Max's payroll for 2 years, Anya said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. He's the one who opened your businesses to Max's fraud. And when the collapse happens, Roberto disappears with immunity, you go to federal prison, and Max consolidates control of the entire territory. Viktor's face had gone pale, rage and disbelief warring across his features. You're lying. Roberto would never. Then call him. Anya pulled up Roberto's personal banking records, the offshore accounts holding millions in Max's payments. Ask him about the account in Grand Cayman. Ask him why he received $200,000 the day after Max's engagement to me was finalized. Ask him where he'll be 18 hours from now when your empire collapses. The silence that followed was absolute. Viktor stared at the screen, at the irrefutable evidence of systematic betrayal, his legendary composure fracturing. This cascade algorithm, he said finally, his voice dangerously quiet. How do we stop it? You issue a kill order on Max Thorne's operations. You freeze every account he controls, you seize his assets, and you force him to surface. Anya pulled up the final slide, the legal exposure analysis. But more importantly, you cooperate with federal investigators. You provide this evidence, you testify that you were the target of the fraud, and you cut a deal that saves your legitimate businesses from seizure. You're asking me to work with the government. Viktor's tone was venomous. I'm asking you to choose between your pride and your survival. Anya closed the laptop, meeting her father's eyes with a steadiness she'd never possessed before. In 18 hours, the market crashes. Orlando Rossi dumps his Kagetech position, Damian's empire implodes, and the cascade reaches your accounts. The SEC freezes everything you own. Your businesses collapse. Your family loses everything. She paused. And you spend the rest of your life in a federal penitentiary, while Max Thorne walks free. Viktor's jaw clenched, the muscle twitching with barely suppressed fury. But beneath the rage, Anya saw something else. Fear. The cold, rational fear of a man staring at his own destruction. What do you need from me? He asked finally. A phone call. To Orlando Rossi. Right now. Anya handed him her phone, the number already dialed. You tell him that if he dumps his Kagetech position, you'll ensure Valentina Rossi's derivative losses are made public, destroying both their reputations. You make him understand that his loyalty to you is the only thing keeping his sister's fund alive. And if he refuses? Then we all lose. Anya's voice was ice. But he won't refuse. Because you're Viktor Maroni, and when you make a threat, people believe it. Viktor took the phone, his hand steady despite the devastation Anya had just laid before him. He made the call. And the weapon Anya had forged finally struck home. The news broke at 6:47 a.m., 13 minutes before the markets opened. Maximilian Thorn, prominent financier and scion of the Leone family, had been arrested by federal agents on charges of securities fraud, market manipulation, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. His assets were frozen. His shell company network, Cerberus Holdings, Hydra Capital, Styx Investments, Tartarus Fund, seized by the SEC. The carefully constructed empire of financial destruction dismantled in a coordinated strike that left no room for appeal. Anya watched the coverage from Damian's penthouse office, exhaustion finally catching up to her now that the adrenaline had drained away. She'd been awake for 43 hours straight. Her eyes burned. Her body ached. But the satisfaction of watching Max's face on the screen, shocked, handcuffed, utterly destroyed, was worth every sleepless second. Orlando Rossi issued his statement of confidence in Kage 15 minutes ago, Damian said, setting a fresh cup of coffee beside her. Stock price jumped 12% on the opening bell. Max's short position didn't just fail, it bankrupted the remaining investors in his network. And Roberto Costa? Arrested attempting to board a private flight to the Caymans. Your father's testimony was remarkably detailed. Damian's tone carried a hint of dark amusement. Apparently Viktor Maroni is very cooperative when his survival is at stake. Anya closed her laptop, turning to face him. My mother and Livia? Secure. New identities prepared if they want them, though your father has agreed to keep them out of any remaining fallout. They're safe. Anya. You kept your family intact. The relief should have overwhelmed her. Instead, Anya felt only a cold, calculating clarity, the same clarity that had carried her through the confrontation with Viktor, through the exposure of Max's conspiracy, through the dismantling of a scheme that would have destroyed empires. I want my own firm, she said. Damian raised an eyebrow. I assumed you'd want a position as my CFO. Silas Vance's replacement. I don't want to replace anyone. Anya stood, moving to the glass wall overlooking the city. I want to build something new. A high-end financial consulting firm, exclusive clientele, boutique services, completely legitimate on paper. On paper. On paper. She turned to face him, her expression sharp. In reality, it's an intelligence front. We use forensic accounting and financial consulting as cover to access our clients' most sensitive information. Corporate structures, investment strategies, vulnerability assessments. We identify their weaknesses, their hidden frauds, their exposure points. And we leverage that intelligence for strategic advantage. Damian studied her for a long moment, and Anya saw the exact instant he understood the brilliance of what she was proposing. You want to build a surveillance network disguised as a consulting firm. I want to build a weapon. Anya's voice was steady, confident. Max almost destroyed us because he had better intelligence. He knew your vulnerabilities because Vance gave him access. He knew my father's systems because Roberto betrayed him. Information is the only currency that matters in this world, and I can acquire it legally, elegantly, and without anyone realizing they're being monitored. And what do you want in exchange for this weapon? Partnership. Not employment. Anya met his gaze directly. I build the firm, I run the operations, I control the intelligence network. But the information flows to you, and you use it to protect our interests. Equal partnership. Damian. Not your analyst. Not your employee. Your partner. The silence stretched between them, tension and calculation balanced on a knife's edge. You're asking for autonomy, Damian said finally. And power. I'm asking for what I've earned. Anya didn't flinch. I dismantled Max's conspiracy. I exposed the moles. I saved both our empires. I proved my value in a way that can never be dismissed or diminished. Now I'm demanding recognition." Damian crossed the distance between them, stopping inches away. "Your father sold you like a commodity. Max tried to use you as a pawn. And you think I'm different? I think you're smart enough to recognize genius when you see it." Anya held his gaze. "And I think you understand that the woman who saved your empire is worth more as a partner than as a possession." For a long moment, Damian said nothing. Then, slowly, deliberately, he extended his hand. "Equal partnership. You build your consulting firm. I provide the capital, the connections, and the protection. The intelligence flows both ways. I give you access to my network. You give me access to everything your clients reveal." His grip was firm, commanding. "But understand this, Anya. If you betray me, if you use this firm against me, there will be no second chances." "I don't need second chances." Anya shook his hand, sealing the agreement. "I just need the freedom to prove what I'm worth." "Then let's build your weapon." Damian released her hand, a ghost of a smile crossing his face. "And show this city what happens when Anya Volkov stops hiding her brilliance." Through the glass wall, the sun rose over a city that had no idea how close it had come to financial collapse. But Anya knew. And now, finally, she had the power to ensure it never happened again. The desperate bride who'd fled her wedding in a torn gown had become something far more dangerous. A financial architect with an empire at her fingertips and a mind sharp enough to cut through any conspiracy. Max Thorne had built a cage to trap her. Instead, she'd forged a throne. Viktor Maroni looked older in the daylight streaming through the conference room windows, the weight of near ruin having carved deeper lines into his face. He sat across from Anya and Damian, flanked by his lawyers, studying the business proposal with the suspicion of a man who'd learned that trust was a luxury he could no longer afford. A financial consulting firm. Viktor's tone was flat, unreadable. "You want my blessing to open a legitimate business." "I want your cooperation," Anya corrected. "The firm will serve high net worth clients, including your legitimate businesses. We'll provide forensic accounting, investment strategy, regulatory compliance. Everything above board, everything legal. And underneath? Underneath, we gather intelligence." Anya didn't flinch from her father's scrutiny. "Our clients trust us with their financial secrets. We use that access to identify threats, expose vulnerabilities, and provide strategic advantage to our partners." She paused. "Including you." Viktor's jaw tightened. "You're asking me to fund a spy network run by my daughter and my former enemy." "I'm offering you stability." Anya leaned forward, her voice cold and precise. "Max almost destroyed you because you didn't see the threat coming. Roberto betrayed you because you never questioned his loyalty. You operated on instinct and violence while the world moved to algorithms and offshore accounts." She held his gaze. "I'm giving you eyes in a world you don't understand. And all you have to do is accept that your daughter is better at this than you ever were." The silence that followed was absolute. Viktor's lieutenants shifted uncomfortably, waiting for the explosion of rage that would surely come from such brazen disrespect. Instead, Viktor laughed, a harsh, bitter sound devoid of humor. "You're right." He closed the proposal folder, his expression settling into weary acceptance. "I built an empire on fear and blood, and it almost cost me everything. You built a weapon out of spreadsheets and saved us all." He looked at Damian. "Take care of her. Because if she ever turns that mind against you, you'll be destroyed before you realize what's happening." "I'm aware," Damian said quietly. Viktor stood, signaling the end of the meeting. As he moved toward the door, he paused beside Anya's chair, his hand hovering for a moment before settling briefly on her shoulder, the closest thing to affection he'd ever shown her. "Your mother would be proud," he said, so quietly only she could hear. Then he was gone, taking his lawyers and his wounded pride with him. Anya exhaled slowly, the tension draining from her body. That went better than expected. He's terrified of you. Damian's tone carried a note of admiration. As he should be. 6 months later, the offices of Volkov Financial Consulting occupied the 43rd floor of a gleaming high-rise in the financial district. Glass walls, minimalist design, an atmosphere of quiet sophistication that attracted exactly the kind of clients Anya wanted. Wealthy, powerful, and willing to trust her with their deepest financial secrets. She stood in her corner office, reviewing the intelligence summary her team had compiled. 3 new clients this month, each one providing access to networks that would have taken years to penetrate through traditional means. The firm was thriving. Her reputation as a financial savant was growing. And the intelligence flowing to Damian had already prevented 2 hostile takeover attempts and exposed a money laundering scheme that would have destabilized the entire territory. You're working late again. Damian's voice came from the doorway. Anya turned, finding him in his perfectly tailored suit, looking every inch the CEO who'd built an empire through calculated ruthlessness. But there was something different in his expression tonight. A softness she rarely saw. The Castellano audit needs to be finished by Friday, she said, gesturing to her screens. And I think I found another shell company linked too. Marry me. The words hung in the air between them, simple and devastating. Anya's breath caught. What? Damian crossed to her desk, pulling a small box from his pocket. Inside, a ring. Elegant, understated, the kind of commitment that wasn't about possession but partnership. 6 months ago, you ran to me in a wedding dress, desperate and brilliant and terrified. He held her gaze, his voice steady. You saved my empire. You built a weapon that's made us untouchable. You've proven yourself as my equal in every ledger, every strategy, every war. He opened the box. So I'm asking you to make it permanent. Not as my employee. Not as my asset. As my partner in everything. Anya stared at the ring, her analytical mind racing through implications and consequences and the weight of what he was offering. This wasn't a political alliance like the one Viktor had arranged with Max. This was a choice, her choice, to bind herself to a man who saw her brilliance and valued it above everything else. Equal partnership, she said finally. In business and in everything else. No hidden clauses. No subordination. Equal partnership, Damian confirmed. You run your firm. I run mine. And together, we ensure no one ever threatens us again. Anya looked at the ring, then at the city sprawling below her office windows. A city where she'd once been nothing more than a commodity to be traded. Now she stood at the top of a tower she'd built with her own mind, holding intelligence that made her more powerful than most of the men who dismissed her. She'd run from one cage on her wedding day. And she'd built herself a throne. Yes. She held out her hand, watching as Damian slid the ring onto her finger. But I'm keeping my name. Volkov Financial Consulting has a reputation now. Damian's smile was genuine, unguarded. I wouldn't expect anything less. He pulled her close, and for the first time since that desperate flight up the steel staircase, Anya felt something that had eluded her entire life. Not safety, not security, but recognition. The acknowledgement that her mind was her greatest weapon, and that she'd finally found someone who valued it as much as she did. The desperate bride had become a financial architect. The disposable daughter had become an equal partner. And the new cage she'd chosen was lined with power, intelligence, and the freedom to wield both without apology. Sometimes the cage you're born into feels inescapable, defined by others' expectations, limited by their inability to see your worth, constrained by systems that value compliance over brilliance. Anya Volkov's story reminds us that the most powerful weapon we possess isn't violence or wealth. It's the courage to recognize our own value and demand that others recognize it too. She didn't wait for permission to be brilliant. She didn't apologize for her intelligence. When the world tried to reduce her to a transaction, she transformed herself into an architect of empires. That's the lesson. Your mind, your skills, your unique genius. These are weapons no one can take from you unless you surrender them willingly. If Anya's journey from desperate bride to financial mastermind resonated with you, I'd love to hear about it. Drop your favorite moment from the story in the comments below. Was it the confrontation with Viktor? The exposure of the mole? That final proposal? And let me know where you're watching from. I love connecting with viewers around the world. Don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this story, and subscribe for more tales of brilliance, betrayal, and the power of refusing to accept the cage you're given. Until next time, choose your throne wisely.